If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy. Download and subscribe at BeBullish.com. The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
All right, welcome to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show.
Hello, Dick Morris.
Sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. So after around the time of the Mamdani victory, I got a poll back that John McLaughlin and I took for President Trump in October 25th to 28th. And the poll results contained a question that was really fairly significant. And we decided to talk about it among ourselves and share it with the president right after the Mamdani election. We asked people in this poll, have you, now that Trump has been in office for almost a year, have you felt anything good happening in your personal family life, finances? Have they gotten better? Have they gotten worse? Or have they stayed about the same? And, John and I were both shocked by the results. It turns out that only 29% of voters felt that their personal finances had gotten better, and 51% felt there had been no impact, or gotten worse. And that's a terrible number, and it indicated a tremendous problem with affordability and with the ability of voters to function. Then when Mamdani won, John and I decided we should call the president and talk to him about it. And we did. And we had a series of conversations, and the president decided that he would propose and push a plan for $2,000 tariff rebate for every taxpayer. He announced on Sunday that Americans will receive at least $2,000 from tariff revenues collected by the Trump administration. Trump's statement comes after the White House defended his sweeping use of tariffs before the Supreme Court this past week, where the judges appeared skeptical of the president's broad use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Trump's public musing about Americans pocketing $2,000 from his tariff revenue also comes after the Democrats won races across the country in last week's election. From more moderate to more progressive candidates, Democrats ran disciplined campaigns focusing on affordability and the cost of living. Here's what to know about Trump's $2,000 tariff check proposal. What Trump has said about the checks, he touted the tariffs, saying that those who oppose them are fools, and that the revenue generated from the import tax on foreign goods would soon begin paying down the country's debt and put money directly in people's pockets. Trump said people that are against tariffs are fools. We're now the richest, most respected country in the world with almost no inflation and a record stock market price. 401ks are the highest ever, Trump wrote in his Truth Social post. We're taking in trillions of dollars. We'll soon begin paying down our enormous $37 trillion debt.
Uh-huh.
Record investment in the USA, plants and factories going up all over the place. A dividend of at least $2,000 a person, not including high-income people, will be paid to everybody.
Beautiful.
He said, number one, we're paying down debt because people have allowed the debt to go crazy, Trump said. We'll pay back debt, but we'll also might make a distribution to the people, almost like a dividend to the people of America. Trump has not specified who would qualify for the dividend, although he said everyone except high-income people
Good, that's fine.
would be paid at least $2,000 in the form of a dividend. In an interview Sunday on This Week, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Stephanopoulos that
stepping a lot of it.
that he hadn't spoken to Trump yet about his proposal, but the 2000 dividend could come in a lot of forms, in direct ways, or there could be tax decreases, like his no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, deductibility of car loans.
Well, hold on, but you think one or the other? Because the thing of putting cash in people's
I think we ought to do the cash in people's pockets.
Right, I know that.
And I think that
I think you got to get closer to your mic,
I think
too.
Percent is steering us wrong and talking about the other stuff.
That's okay. Yeah, right.
He's doing it because Trump hasn't been specific.
It really has to be cash into people's pocket.
So and I think that the key element here is that this would show people dramatically how their lives are different as a result of Trump's economic policies. During the pandemic, Congress passed 3 rounds of stimulus checks, 2 of which Trump signed into law during his first administration. The first round in March of 2020 gave $1,200 to each tax filer and $500 per child. The second round...
Was that a one-time deal?
Yeah.
I forget.
The second round in December 2020 gave $600 to each tax filer and $600 per child. The third round, which was Biden's final bid for re-election, signed into law by Biden on March 2021, gave each tax filer $1,400 or $2,800 for married couples with $1,400 per child for dependent. For the 2 rounds of stimulus checks that Trump signed into law, people making up to $75,000 a year and married couples making up to $150,000 were eligible for the full amount of the payments. The question is, how much money is the tariff bringing in? And Besant said we really don't know. Through September, the government raised $195 billion in revenue from the tariffs, and that represents a 250% increase, or an additional $118 billion compared to what the government collected in tariffs the previous year.
$195 billion.
Yeah, of extra money. And a lot of people have said, well, that's just a stimulus. It's the same as Biden did. But it's not a stimulus. The stimulus payment is undeserved, unearned. It's just getting out money that we have and doing it to stimulate the economy and to counter the effects of possible recession or of pandemic. The rebates we're talking about are very different.
The tariffs.
Yeah. Well, the rebates Trump's going to give from the tariffs. This is money that the American people got ripped off for over the last century, or last decade.
Buying imported goods.
Buying high-priced imported goods. Mm-hmm. Whose price was jacked up by the tariffs. And what Trump is doing...
See, that's a good way to place it. That's a good way to put it.
As he goes around the world telling countries they have to lower their tariffs to the U.S., or raising our tariffs to them. That's a nation-to-nation transaction between Washington and Tokyo and Beijing and Moscow.
Right.
But it doesn't involve the American people.
And that's why his numbers started to fall with his approval numbers.
An individual doesn't benefit from that. So Trump said, I'm going to change this and make sure that every individual can actually feel in his own bank account the differences here. And that's a big difference for Trump, and that was exactly what McLaughlin and I had.
And as you said last week, this is something he has to go through Congress with, so he's not going to be able to do this right away. It's not going to executive order, right? He can't do that.
It would require Congress, but it will pass pretty easily.
Good.
The obstacle he faces is the Supreme Court, because at the same time that he's proposing to do this, the court is taking up a lawsuit by people who want to say that he should not be able to adjust tariffs without consulting Congress.
And who wants to sue him on the left?
A bunch of, not on the left so much, a bunch of merchants and businessmen who were hurt by it.
Because they're paying that extra.
Yeah.
Sure.
And they're saying that you can't do this, you gotta go through Congress to do it. And, it's now before the Supreme Court. And we'll talk about it a little later in the show, but the people who are normally supportive of Trump on the court, these 6 conservative judges, are showing that they're not really necessarily willing to go this far.
Well, when we get to the story, it's big.
And that's going to be a big issue in the coming months for Trump. He's going to push hard for his rebate plan. He's also going to work to lower tariffs with other countries or raise them where they're not lowering them. and then he's going to work on trying to get some of that money in rebates for the American people. But and Congress isn't objecting because Congress is controlled by the Republicans. But many people are using Congress as a method of trying to discipline Trump on this and stop him from going ahead with this program.
You mean the lobbyists of those small businesses?
Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
And this is now before the Supreme Court. And in the early oral arguments, there were some of the judges who were normally supportive of Trump were suspicious about this. Amy Coney Barrett, for example, said, if you do this, you could do anything without Congress. and some of the judges were concerned that this was an excessive grant of power.
Oh, I get that.
But the problem is that we've already collected $200 billion
giving it back
from the high tariffs, and giving it back is going to be a pain.
And it's going to be closer to $1 trillion by the time.
You'd have to figure out which companies, which people, for what, and that's tough.
Just put it in a pool. A swimming pool.
But the key thing here is that Trump is taking action to deal with the affordability issue in a very fundamental way. And it's very different from the Biden stimulus because it's basically reimbursing us for the horrible treatment we've had from foreign trade.
The only way these, as you said, some of the businesses, small businesses that are the people suing, is if the economy really starts to get strong and they get busy again. So, in other words, the economy is getting strong. People have money now in their pockets to go to those small businesses. They won't feel it the same way. They'll see that it's working. Right now, for the small businesses, they don't feel it's working because it's taken from them.
Now, Trump has also teed up a second issue that I think will be dominant over the course of the year, which is what do we do with the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, ACA?
Not so Affordable Care Act.
And the Democrats have said that as the need for premium subsidies increase, and Obamacare obviously is not paying for itself, and the premiums so far are not adequate, that we should increase federal subsidies of the act. One of their demands in the government shutdown was money for that. And Trump came back and said, I'm not doing that. I won't give you more money for Affordable Care Act.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
But he did propose a new health care policy that was based on the idea that Obamacare is untenable.
And it was broken.
And he said the Democrats are holding the country hostage to try to negotiate on a health care system that they created, Obamacare as it's been called, is a system the Democrats created. It's a broken system. It's driven up health care costs dramatically in the country, and now they shut the government down in a way to try to fix that system. They broke. It doesn't make any sense to us, which is why the president said this is a completely untenable position. Trump is going to open conversations about health care, and I think you'll see the president putting forth some really good policy proposals that Democrats should take very seriously to fix again the system that they've broken. What I want, Trump said, is instead of money going to the insurance companies, I want the money to go to people who can then buy their own health insurance.
See, that's very interesting, but it's going to go straight. It could only go to their health.
Yeah.
In other words, it's a credit. It's a gift card. Well, that goes straight to the health care.
Yeah. Well, it's money that's paid into an account like 401k.
Right.
By the government. It can only go for health care.
Right.
And it's called a health savings account.
It's like a gift card for,
and we already have that, but it's very underfunded. It's very small. And it's not seen as a supplement to Obamacare, not a replacement for it.
And the Dems don't like it because their healthcare people aren't getting their money in their pocket who lobby them, right?
Right. Trump said it's so good the insurance will be better. It'll cost less. Everybody's going to be happy. They're going to feel like entrepreneurs. They're actually going to be able to go out and negotiate their own health insurance, and they can use it only for that reason. Pay the people, not the insurance company.
Wow, that's amazing. What an amazing concept.
Trump said Obamacare sucks.
Yeah, that's
the worst health care for the highest price. Trump's Truth Social posting comes after Schumer proposed a deal to reopen the government calling for tens of billions of money to be funneled into the insurance companies. Trump turned that idea down and said after the government reopens, he'll address how to handle this situation.
You know, Dick.
At that point, what he'll undoubtedly do is propose these health savings accounts, and he'll put money into them. And then you'll go into the hospital and your doctor will say, you should get another MRI. And you're going to say, well, how much does that cost? Right now they'll tell you, we don't know. And they'll tell you, oh, that's going to be $3,000. And you're going to say, well, if I spend that $3,000, I'm going to have $3,000 less in my health savings account. And at the end of the year, I can keep what was left in there as income. So I'm in effect paying that $3,000 out of my pocket. And I'm not going to do it unless I have to.
Whoa. Wait. Back up. So let's say there's $10,000 in your health account.
Yeah.
You know, if you spend $5,000, it rolls over into that account.
Yeah.
It's not yours in your pocket.
No, but at the end of the year, it would be.
No, so that's not good. Because then people won't use it for what they need to use it. They're going to want to put it in their pocket.
They would certainly have the option of doing either. I'm not sure what they're going to do, and I'm not sure what the bill will say. But the important thing is that the individual person makes that decision. And it makes you the sovereign person over your own health care. And that's not the situation now. And,
I think it should just roll over into the account so that if the person does have a problem next year he didn't get the MRI last year, actually he would then. If it's going to roll over into his account, then he will get that MRI, whatever he needs.
We'll see how Trump phrases it. But the idea of making the health insurance program not a welfare program, but a savings account,
right,
is revolutionary and is very important. And so when we come back, we'll talk about how Trump reopened the government.
Before you go,
deal was.
Before you go, you said Chuck Schumer. You got that wrong. It's Chuckles Schumer.
Okay, gotcha.
When we come back.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
Before we go, Dick, I just want to call out the call-out number, the call-in number. Call out the call-in. Yeah, I don't know what's the matter with me. 800-848-9222. It's 800-848-9222. And I do know what's wrong with me, but I can't tell you. Go.
The real reason the Democrats caved in and reopened the government was Trump's threat to send the money to subsidize Obamacare premiums directly to the taxpayers, not to the insurance companies. The resulting refunds to taxpayers were so underscored how Obamacare was a payoff to the insurance companies that the Democrats could not ignore it. So rather than face the embarrassment, they gave in and reopened the government. The Democratic senators shed crocodile tears over the harm to unpaid federal workers.
Oh, Chuckles.
But that wasn't the real reason for the capitulation. The real reason was that Trump was smart enough to call their bluff.
Mm-hmm.
Once he raised the prospect that the Obamacare subsidies would not follow the usual path into the insurance companies' coffers and then into campaign contributions, the Democrats realized that the jig was up. They could no longer pretend that they wouldn't take the deal the GOP was offering because it wasn't rich enough. It was that the checks were adequate, but they had the wrong payee directly to the taxpayer and not to their insurance company campaign contributors. Score a point for political and financial acumen of Donald Trump.
It's amazing.
As we look forward to the post-shutdown age, if you call it that, in federal government, we have two trends here that are going to be very significant. One is Trump's efforts to issue tax rebates to people based on tariff revenues. And that's going to go to the Supreme Court, where it's going to face its major test. My own view is that they will limit some of the powers, but still allow some of the subsidies. And the second thing is that Trump is going to flesh out this proposal about health care, and that's going to be the substance of the debate over the next year in politics. Healthcare has always been a Democratic issue. It's always been something that voters trust the Democrats with more than the Republicans. And Trump needs to break that and needs to make that a Republican issue, not a Democratic one. It's a little bit like education. Originally, the issue has always been a Democratic issue. How much more are we going to spend on schools? But Trump has changed it into an issue of who's going to get the money. Individuals who can give it to charter schools if they want, or to the bureaucrats who will tell them what school they have to go to. And this is the same thing going on in healthcare. And it's a fight not just over this money, but over the future of the issue. And if Trump can win this and can break the subsidy train, the daisy train, that takes our premiums and subsidizes insurance companies with them, but still use it to pay for healthcare, it'll be a major, major change. Sandra,
we're going to get Sandra from New Jersey. Hi, Sandra.
Oh, hello. Hello. It was so nice seeing you.
It was nice seeing you the other night. Yeah.
Oh, ditto. You really added to the evening so much, so thank you for that.
Yeah, we were at the Women's Republican Club the other night when Rob Astorino was there, and Sandra invited us. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Rob spoke about how we can oppose Hochul and how we can win the elections of 26.
He really was brilliant. I got to tell you, I really was impressed.
He was great. But after his speech,
you guys added to it a lot.
Well, after his speech, I said, the issue is not so much how we will beat Hochul. It's how Hochul will beat Mamdani. I said the Democrats have basically voted for a civil war by putting Mamdani in power and giving him the opportunity to change fundamentally the whole governing system of New York. He's doing stuff that Hochul can't allow to happen. And there's going to be an effort by Hochul to restrain that stuff, and Mamdani will bristle at that. So even now...
That's a good insight. That's a good...
Even now we're talking right now about Mamdani said he was going to give free bus fares to people, free bus rides. And Hochul came back and said, that's going to cost $700 billion and $700 million, and I don't have that.
Right.
And we can't do that.
We're going to talk about that very soon.
So this kind of fight is going to go on. And it was key for us to understand that Hochul's ability to get reelected is not so much dependent on how effective Stefanik is in challenging him, but how effective Mamdani will be basically in castrating.
Very interesting. I mean, we kind of talked about this anyway, but the way you put it, that's very interesting. Yeah. So, Sandra, what would you like to say now that Dick Morris laid out everything?
No, he didn't get this. This is something that's infuriating me. He's not even mayor yet, and he has the nerve to put his face involved with the Starbucks situation. Look, employees have a right to strike. It's between Starbucks and the employees. Do you know, Doug and Dick, he's going to tell all his voters not to use Starbucks.
Wow.
That's not fair. That is not fair. What he's doing is he's manipulating his voters. He's not letting them think for themselves, all these young
Sandra,
voters.
Sorry to interrupt you, but he only did this after the election because his supporters need a cup of Starbucks to get motivated to go out and vote.
First of all,
he's not going to deprive them of that stimulant before they cast their votes.
First of all, I think it tastes like dirt anyway, so I don't like it.
Well, but
I know, but that's not the point. The point is Starbucks has been in the city. He'll pack up his bags. He doesn't care. He'll leave if he's going to start getting involved. He's putting his face where it doesn't belong.
Right.
He's going to be an annoying mayor. I could see you already
is.
In your face mayor.
Annoying mayor. Annoying. Yeah. But I think we have to look at Gavin Newsom for an example.
Newsom
increased the minimum wage in California to $20 an hour.
He wants to go to 30, doesn't? This guy wants to go to 30.
Mamdani wants to go to 30 or 50. But Newsom actually raised it to 20. And the result was that all kinds of fast food places stopped be automated.
Of course.
and stopped using workers.
Bad timing, Newscomb.
And about 30% of the workers at these fast food places lost their jobs. And now you're going to see the same thing happening at Starbucks, because so much of it can be automated. They can take the order by phone or online. You can get billed. You can pay with your credit card.
And they're all a bunch of lefties there too. They probably voted for this man Kami anyway. Listen, remember when somebody, I don't know when this was, they were putting, you have to say your name when you order Starbucks, like Doug or Dick. A lot of people were saying, what's your name? They would say Trump, and then they would call out Trump. It was pretty funny. I think you had to be there. It was funny.
But I think I think, Sandra, you're right, but I think this kind of short-sighted, feel-good program, sure, pay them $20, but then you'll find that there's no Starbucks near you.
Yeah, right.
Or that there is, but there are nobody employees there.
You gotta press the button to get your
and
coffee.
all these people will be unemployed because Mamdani decided to give them a raise.
And he did say 30. Am I wrong about that? Did I hear did he use that in his campaign? I want to go to 30.
I don't know.
I could be wrong. Unbelievable.
Okay.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra.
Anything else while we're still on with you?
No, I wanted to say, I told you that at the dinner, that he wants to make the salaries $30. And you know what my sister said? She runs a business. Oh, my God, if we have to pay these people $30, what will I pay the ones who are already getting $30? It's just going to be a mess.
Right.
A mess.
And a small business cannot stay in business with that kind of hourly rate.
It's going to simulate automation. It's going to cost them their jobs. The good news is you get $15 more an hour. The bad news is you lose your job.
Or you're going to have delis, these Italian delis and these Jewish delis. It's just the mom and pop is really going to be mom and pop. They're the only ones working there. They're not going to be able to pay the people. No, it's not going to go well at all. Anyway, thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra. Let's go to Patrick from, I'm not sure where. Indiana.
Yeah,
thank
all
you.
right. The Hoosiers.
Uh-huh.
Who's your daddy?
And, Trump has to start relying more on the Constitution, because it says in Article 4, Section 4, that the president has authority in foreign affairs, and the Marshall Court, Supreme Court, in 1801, in the case Schooner Peggy versus United States, they confirmed that the president had authority in foreign affairs.
Yeah.
Now, the Supreme Court, which was the only court originally established by the Constitution, but Article 3 is all about the courts and their authority, and it's all domestic affairs. It's not foreign affairs.
Well, it also gives the Constitution also gives Congress the power to decide what jurisdiction the federal courts should have below the Supreme Court. In fact, the Constitution doesn't create these courts. The Congress did. But the point is that, everybody concedes that the president has power over foreign policy. But on the other hand, the Constitution says that the Congress has power over raising taxes. And the tariff is a tax. On the other hand, it's levied on foreign countries. So which is it, foreign or domestic?
How is the tariff a tax?
What?
I never did understand how the tariff
how's the tariff a tax?
Well, it's a tax on someone who wants to sell stuff in the United States.
Okay,
it's almost
but
like
that's
an
a foreign
admission fee.
affair.
Yeah, it is. It is. The question is...
And the Congress and the Supreme Court has no authority in foreign affairs.
Yeah, it does.
The president has authority.
It does. The Constitution gives Congress the power over taxation. And we need to... And there are two authorities that are in conflict here. And we have to see what's going to happen with Congress. Now, part of the result of the shutdown has been that there's been a new focus on food stamps, the SNAP program, SNAP. And we'll talk about how the cost has gone up dramatically and what we can do about it.
Right when we get back. Thank you, guys.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. Spending on SNAP, food stamps, has shot up to $100 billion in 2024. About 2% of Americans received SNAP benefits in 1970, but today 13% receive them. Some 42 million people.
Wow.
And it will be okay, except the error rate, which measures how often states make mistakes in figuring out who gets the benefits and how much they receive, hit 11% in 22 and 24, 3 times higher than it was in 2013.
Wow.
So basically the Democrats have passed welfare reform under Clinton, and then they proceeded to use disability benefits and food stamps and health insurance subsidies as alternative forms of welfare, alternative ways of putting money into the pockets of their clients, the voters. And really what we're doing now is chasing that around and making sure that they don't steal that money through error rates and stuff.
We sometimes forget that was just their way of getting votes, that offering people stuff, and that's how they get votes.
Right.
And that's where they're going with that.
Right. So, it's time for On the Rocks.
Yeah, we're going to do On the Rocks with Roxana Maria.
Are we taking gin or vodka on the rocks? No, we're getting Roxana on the rocks.
No, she's in Florida, so it's hot, so she could be on the rocks. It's cold here.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Roxana.
Yeah, this is taking a different path. I woke this morning with this quote in my mind. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. So I went with that. And then I have a dream.
Now, you know where Best of Times comes from. That's from Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens.
Yes, that's correct.
Sure.
And then I have a dream. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Make America great again. These quotes inspire, but on one phrase in particular has become a rallying cry, for some an abbreviation of division, for others MAGA. I wondered why the intense polarization. I found that for supporters, MAGA represents hope, patriotism, and validation, a sense of protection for their values in a rapidly changing world. For critics, however, MAGA has become synonymous with anger, distrust, and contempt. Still, and a rising violence in everything Trump. The issue for the left is the majority of Americans were still yearning for a return to traditional values, military strength, law and order, all which provides a sense of safety, which we felt was being eroded. This perceived erosion of our fundamental rights in society had created an environment of urgency the past 4 years with Biden, his lack of leadership, a need for a leader who embodies strength, patriotism, and a willingness to challenge the status quo, and thus President Donald Trump. By the time that he ran for re-election, the country had witnessed 4 years of polarized politics. The divisions had deepened, and the desire for change had only intensified. We'd had enough of the propaganda that infiltrated our educational systems, spreading divisive ideology that threatened the very fabric of our society. So where do we go from here? How do we stop the bleeding red onto our beautiful red, white, and blue? I believe the answer lies in embracing the values enshrined in our Constitution, rooted in our faith. We must recognize our strength also lies in world history of the undisputed failure of socialist communism. Every time it fails, collapses, suffering is for the citizens. As millions of young people awaken to the importance of preserving truth, the movement that began to take shape, led by the courageous late Charlie Kirk, it was built on the bedrock of American values and faith. With fearlessness, focus, and confidence, we can overcome the forces that seek to undermine our way of life. We can ensure our children acquire a nation that is still a beacon of hope, freedom, and opportunity. This Islamic socialist communism, with all their promises of grandeur,
written with an invisible ink, shall fade away just as the insincerity from whence it came. I believe that. So let us remember as we move forward, I'll end this with a quote of great significance, especially in these times, that freedom is a fragile thing, never more than one generation away from extinction. We've heard this before. It is not ours by way of inheritance. It must be fought for, and it must be defended. And I believe that's where we are now.
Right.
Okay. Blessings to everybody.
Well, thank you.
Rox.
On the rocks. Yeah,
on the
thanks
rocks.
a lot.
Thank you.
You know, that as you were talking, it occurred to me that really what MAGA is it says that the real problem is government, and that if you get government out of the way, we can grow and we can really expand. But that MAGA is not an effort to reform governments, it's an effort to replace government with individual initiative, and a lot of Trump's program about giving tariff money and Obamacare subsidies to people is to empower them and disempower government.
And Doge was part of it,
exactly.
Rip it apart, and,
Now, if the Supreme Court... Yeah, go ahead.
Dick, I just wanted to say with what you were talking about earlier about the shutdown, it's interesting. There was a lot of negativity, but when people were interviewed, Trump stayed steadfast, right, with all the unreasonable demands, especially the insurance and all that. Right. But when they interviewed people state to state, they felt that he was doing the right thing, even though it was a struggle.
Right.
And that his leadership, proved that they made the right choice.
Yeah, well, it also proved Democrats were completely full of it.
And it also showed that the people knew it was the Democrats that handled the shutdown, not the president.
Right.
Right, exactly.
That's what was the important part.
Now, if the court throws out the tariff, what's Trump going to do? The Supreme Court's now weighing whether Trump's tariffs, which hinge on a specified economic emergency power, can remain intact. It leaves one of his biggest policy initiatives hanging in the balance. While uploading the tariffs would mark a vast expansion of presidential power, striking them down could unleash a host of dilemmas for Trump, from mass payouts to finding new legal authority to push his priorities across the line. What would await Trump, in the words of Supreme Court Judge Amy Coney Barrett, who he appointed, is a mess. Refunds for companies. Trump administration has acknowledged that a Supreme Court loss would mean refunds of the billions of tariff revenues already collected. It convinced lower courts to pause their rulings in validating the tariffs, in part because of the concerns the refunds could be issued only for the Supreme Court to potentially declare the tariffs legal and make it more difficult to claw back the cash.
Wow.
Refunds for the group of small businessmen challenging Trump's tariffs at the high court would be the most straightforward. The administration has already agreed to pay them back if it loses. For the others, the lawyer for the businesses said it's a very complicated thing that involves formal protests and administrative procedures. So it's difficult, absolutely. And the Secretary of the U.S. Trade Representative said, I'll just hand that file to the Treasury Department to process the refunds if the court rules for the challenges. You'll have all these importers and importing interests who are going to want their money back, Greer said. Wow. And so we'll have to figure out probably with the court what kind of a schedule might look like and what the rights of these parties and what the rights of the government has to do with the money. The government has confronted the problem before in 1998 after the Supreme Court struck down a harbor maintenance tax as unconstitutional. It led to a new round of litigation that lasted for roughly 2 years. But that battle involved only about $750 billion, far less than the almost $200 billion already collected under Trump's new tariffs. Secretary of Trade Greer told Fox News that reciprocal tariffs have already brought in more than $100 billion. And Trump said a loss in the case would turn the U.S. into a third world country and cast the case as a life or death moment. He reiterated his concerns following the Supreme Court arguments, where the court was skeptical. The president contended that the government would have to pay back trillions of dollars because it's taken in as much from tariffs.
Wow.
A loss will also affect the trade deal his administration has been basing on projected trade earnings. I hope we're going to win, Trump said. I can't imagine anybody would do that kind of devastation to our country.
We have to take a break, but when we get back, Dick, I got to ask you, would the Supreme Court have to look at that? What it would have to do? What we would have to go through before they...
And in the next segment, it'll be your turn to talk about how Trump might function if the court throws it out.
When we get back.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
So, Dick, what do you...
I'll talk about that in a second, but something's going on right now that's significant. Trump is meeting with the Saudis to improve Saudi and Israeli relations. The peace deal in Gaza tease up the possibility that the Abraham Accords could be extended to include Saudi Arabia and the Emirate countries, Dubai and Qatar and those countries. If that happens, that is virtually a guarantee of permanent peace in the Middle East.
Wow.
Because it ties the Saudi economy and the Israeli economy together. And it means that Israel will become increasingly dependent on Saudi capital, and the Saudis will become increasingly dependent on Israeli technology. And by knitting the two of them together, it looks like they're doing right now and meeting in Washington as we speak.
Basically a business partnership in a sense.
Exactly. Wow. Combining Saudi money and Israeli technology.
Wow.
What a combination.
Wow, is this his idea?
Yeah, that's his idea, and they're negotiating it this hour as they're meeting.
Wow.
Now, let me go to Doug and ask him what Trump would do if the court kills his tariffs.
An adverse Supreme Court decision, could bar Trump from invoking the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the IEEP, I call it, IEEPA, the IEEP, to implement the bulk of his sweeping tariff agenda. It would force the president to seek out other statutes to effectuate his overhaul of global trade. There's a whole host of statutes in the tariff architecture of Title 19, which both expressively confer the power to tariff and always impose clear limits. Cattile, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Cattile said, referencing to the section of law that deals with custom duties. Cattile, I think that's it. Cattile listed several options, including sections 122, 201, and 301 of the Trade Act of 74 and sections 338 of the Tariff Act in 1930. Later in the argument, he referenced sections 232 of the 1962 Trade.
So if you don't read any of those, stay tuned.
Yeah. I crossed them all out, but I just read them, right? I crossed them out, but I did it. Under Section 122 authority, Trump could impose tariffs up to 15% for up to 150 days over unbalanced trade, though it has not been used before. The president could invoke Section 201 authority to impose duties of an increase in imports in causing or threatening serious injury to American manufacturers after the U.S. International Trade Commission has investigated and made findings. Using Section 232 authority, Trump could impose restrictions on imports if the U.S. Secretary of Commerce determines after an investigation that some circumstance of those imports threaten to impair national security. Trump could direct the office of the U.S. Trade Representative. This is a lot of stuff, right? He could direct the U.S. Office of U.S. Trade Representatives to impose tariffs as an enforcement measure of American rights under trade agreements and in response to certain foreign trade practices following the office's investigation, once again, using Section 301 authority. And by invoking Section 338, I can't feel I'm saying all these numbers, or authority, The president could place tariffs on imports whenever he shall find as a fact that the foreign nations impose unreasonable charges or discriminate against U.S. commerce. Those levies may not exceed 50%. No president has used that measure either, but he went above 50% a couple of times.
Threatening to, yeah.
Right. IEEPA looks very different, and I think based on textual arguments, the president is likely to lose, she said.
He'll lose, that is the assertion of emergency power. And what Doug is doing is enumerating what power the president has from past legislation that he could invoke now.
Now, but Alito said during Wednesday's argument that it is a realistic possibility for the administration to try a new approach, but Trump would then attempt to collect the tariffs under a new legal authority, and inevitably the plaintiffs would take him back to court. So it's going to go for a couple of years. It's not going to go in 2 months. And it would have to progress through those lower courts and come back to the U.S. when a year from now, 6 months from now, who knows, while the tariffs continue to be collected and the amount that's at stake mounts into the billions, the conservative justice said. I mean, what are we to do now? $100 billion? We get up to $1 trillion. He continues, Alito saying, as he continue. That's what you're suggesting.
Yeah. So
it could turn into $1 trillion.
Trump appointed 3 judges of the court, and he has a nominal 6-3 majority of people who he or other Republicans have appointed. But they're not slaves, and they're smart, and they'll come up with their own ideas as the litigations proceed. But here we have a case that could absolutely destroy the Trump agenda. His whole foreign policy, his whole ability to make peace in the Middle East, his ability to get manufacturing into the United States and get jobs here, his ability to move aggressively against the drug cartels and take care of them, his ability to do any of the things in his agenda,
based on
even
this,
crack down on illegal immigration, is wholly or in part because of the emergency powers under the Tariff Act.
The consequence of the tariff, and that's how he can make his deals.
And this question really is the Supreme Court going to absolutely freeze Trump's capacity to act?
Wow.
Or are they going to expand some of the loopholes that Doug just went through, and keep his capacity to act?
I'm going to call this his Trump card. You know what I mean? This really is his Trump card.
Well, he needs a Trump card.
That's what this is,
depending on what the Supreme Court does.
Oh, my God.
And I think what's going on now is that the judges are saying, on the one hand, we want to respect a narrow interpretation of the law. We want to preserve congressional authority as much as we can, but we're not going to send the United States into bankruptcy or tie up the country for 5 years with litigation.
And figuring out how all the bean counters, where this money's going to go and how you're going to dish it out.
Exactly.
It's going to be a
every one of those
show.
will be a separate lawsuit.
Wow.
So I think those are the discussions going on now in the Supreme Court, and we'll see some Monday in the future how they rule.
And then now he wants to drill in the Gulf of America and Alaska. You know what I say about Alaska. I won't get into that. The Department of Interior announced on November 7th 2 major steps to expand offshore oil and gas leasing under President Donald Trump. Trump's One Big Beautiful Badass Bill Act, unveiling plans for the first lease sale in the Gulf of America and another proposed auction in Alaska's Cook Inlet. The measures are the first in a schedule of 30 offshore sales in the U.S. of America, in the Gulf of America. It's hard to remember, you know. In the Gulf of America and 6 in Alaska, part of what the Interior Department Bureau of Ocean Energy and Management, BOEM, described as the Trump administration's effort to unleash American energy dominance and cement the United States' position as a global energy powerhouse. Trump's signing of the One Big Beautiful Bill marked the beginning of a new chapter for oil and gas development in the Gulf of America and Alaska's Cook Inlet. Acting BOEM Director Matt Giancona said in a statement, BOEM is now moving forward with its predictable congressional mandate leasing schedule that will support offshore oil and gas development for decades to come. BOEM is the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management.
Everything Trump is doing in foreign policy is based on the increased use of oil and fossil fuels in the U.S. I was just watching Katie McFarland the other day, and former national security advisor, and she said the only reason that Russia has not taken over Ukraine and that Ukraine is basically winning that war is that Russia doesn't have the money to fight it. And the reason they don't is that the price of oil has dropped. And it's dropped because production has increased significantly. We'll come back about this when we come back, and we'll continue talking about it.
We're going to come back when we come back, Dick?
Yep.
Okay, we'll be back when we come back.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hi, welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. The United States now is barred from drilling for oil in Alaska and along the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean coasts. There is limited drilling allowed in what used to be the Gulf of Mexico, now is the Gulf of America. What Trump has essentially done is eliminate those restrictions and set up 80 million acres in the Gulf of America and more in the Atlantic coast and the Pacific coast. Right. That's open for drilling, and in Alaska. And to attract participation, it set a 12.5% royalty rate, the lowest permitted by statute for both shallow and deep water leases. To
give them incentive
to come in and do that.
So it's going to be low money out of their pocket.
So this is a gigantic change. It means that the big, beautiful Cook Inlet, one would make about 1 million acres available for leasing for oil and gas, and others would follow. In all, about 80 million acres in the Gulf and on the Atlantic and Pacific coast could now be available for offshore drilling. This will dramatically increase the amount of oil we produce a day. The U.S. currently produces about 12 million barrels a day of oil. The second largest is Russia, that produces about 11, followed by Saudi Arabia, that's about 10. The worldwide total is about 90 million. And this will increase the American share of that probably up to 20 million.
And we're so much more careful about keeping it clean.
Yeah.
Environmentally, the left's going to say, oh, you shouldn't do this right away. I could see it already. Oh, you shouldn't do this, the environment, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, so let's not drill and have everyone else around the world drill, and they don't really care if they pollute their waters and they pollute the thing and they give us sludge.
And also, drilling offshore got a bad name with the Deepwater Horizon spill. But we haven't had anything like that
When was that? I kind of remember that. What was that?
I think it was,
in the 90s?
Sure. In the 90s.
Yeah. I kind of remember that.
It screwed up the Gulf for decades. But that hasn't happened since. And that's, first we double-holed our tankers and we restricted where you could drill. And the, method of coping with disaster really improved. So what Trump is doing now is unleashing this vast power.
That's what he's going to do. Energy independence. We need to have it again. Pardon me, Dick. Just pardon me right now. I need to be pardoned.
Oh, pardoned, yeah. Okay.
I had to do it. Pardon me. So Trump's pardoned Rudy and a couple other people. Let's talk about this. Sweeping pardons of Rudy Giuliani, Jeffrey Clark, Mark Meadows, and more than 70 other allies involved in efforts to challenge the 2020 election could upend the illegal landscape for a handful of lingering states. Prosecutions tied up the so-called alternate electors plot.
What that is that
right.
The Constitution gives each state the right to name its own electors. And the Republicans in 2020, after the Democrats tried to steal the election, or succeeded in stealing the election, was to set up alternate electors. So they'd go to Georgia and they'd say, if you believe what the Secretary of State is saying, these votes ought to go to Biden. But we believe they ought to go to Trump. And we'll name some electors for Trump and we'll name some electors for Biden. And then we'll let the Congress choose which electors to focus on. And that was the substance of the January 9th riot, because that was the day when Congress was going to decide whose electors we were going to follow, which slate of electors.
Yeah, so pardon attorney Ed Martin offers a full, complete and unconditional pardon to all United States citizens connected to the 2020 fake elector strategy or to efforts to expose voting fraud. The order does not apply to Trump himself, but covers many of the most prominent figures once scrutinized by former special counsel Jack Smith and Democratic prosecutors in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada.
In the judicial world, you don't get a clean bill of health, but this is essentially throwing out these cases and saying there was no deliberate attempt to fix the election. There was simply an attempt to deal with fraud, and that the people who they're prosecuting for dealing with the fraud have got to be pardoned.
Prosecutors in several battleground states are now nearing deadlines to decide whether to proceed or retreat. Who was pardoned? Among those listed are my good friend Rudy Giuliani, Trump's personal lawyer during the 2020 campaign, former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, former DOJ official Jeffrey Clark, conservative attorneys Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, John Eastman, and Ken Chesebro, and political advisor and attorneys Boris, I don't know if it's Epstein or Epstein.
Epstein.
Right. I bump into him once in a while. Nice guy. Although included are Arizona GOP chairwoman Kelly Ward and her husband Michael Ward, who were charged as alternate electors in that state. Powell, Ellis, and Chesebro previously entered guilty pleas in Georgia's election racketeering case. In a post on Monday on X, Clark said Trump's pardon applies to me and others aiming to end the lawfare, adding that while he believes it should terminate professional misconduct proceedings against him under a Supreme Court precedent known as Ex parte Garland, he expects the D.C. Office of Disciplinary Counsel to continue pursuing its complaint against him. Friday night, President Trump called me my personal capacity to say he pardoned me. He also shared encouraging words about my past and current work, for which I am deeply grateful. It was totally unexpected. I never lobbied for any form of pardon. I did nothing wrong when I was questioned in the 2020 election in Georgia, including my drafting an unsent privilege letter urging Georgia officials to launch their own investigations and they decide for themselves.
And Rudy Giuliani issued a statement saying he stands by his work following the 2020 election when he responded to the legitimate concerns of thousands of everyday Americans. The statement reads, Mayor Giuliani never sought a pardon, but is deeply grateful for Trump's decision. This action further highlights the years of unjust attacks against Mayor Giuliani and so many others, and reinforces what should now be clear to everybody. Mayor Giuliani deserves to have his bar license immediately reinstated without delay.
Well, I say, and I've been saying this forever, Rudy Giuliani, what he's done for us in this city, he should have what I call a forever pass. I don't care what he does, short of killing someone. This guy should never get arrested, never, for what no one has done for this city like Rudy has done.
Yeah.
And I believe, and I don't know if I've said this on I don't think I have. I believe Rudy really is like a mentor to Trump. I think Trump loved him so much as a mayor and saw how strong he was in doing what he did to clean up the city. I believe Trump probably looked at that and say, wow, look at this guy, what he's doing. I don't know that for a fact, but I feel that.
Well, New York is getting well, or at least the past is we're stopping the persecution of the past. We have joyous news here.
Oh, this is unbelievable.
Which is that Iran and Tehran, the capital, may be running out of water and may have to be evacuated.
You know, you got to think the anger of the Lord will be kindled
that's a
against
Bible
you.
quote.
Right.
From Deuteronomy.
Right.
Then
you want to say it? You want me to say it? Then the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, and he will shut up the heavens so that there will be no rain, and the land will yield no fruit, and you will perish quickly off the good land, and that's the Lord giving you. Deuteronomy 11:17. Mother Nature may accomplish something that neither the U.S. nor Israel could ever have contemplated. The evacuation of Tehran's almost 10 million inhabitants. Iran has currently experienced its 5th consecutive year of drought, and the autumn rainfall is about a quarter of that in 2024. That would be 2 millimeters. In short, Tehran is facing a day zero catastrophe. 0 day is probably shortly after January 1st. Masoud Pezeshkian, I don't know, I call him possesses the key to the exit door. The president, Iran's president, warned on Thursday that if the drought persists more than a month longer from now, we'll have to evacuate Tehran.
Tehran.
Oh yeah, Tehran, right. Mr. Whatever, keys to the exit door has not explained how such an evacuation would be. That's pretty good, right? Possesses the key. The president of Iran had warned about Tehran's water crisis for months and has even promoted moving the capital south, closer to the Persian Gulf, where there's access to open waters. I say go a little further into the Gulf. What the hell? Once a vital lifeline holder of over 160,000 acre feet. An acre foot is if you take an acre of land and you pour water in it, and it's got a foot high of an acre, that's an acre foot. So 160,000 acre feet. That's what they had, now languishing at mere 8% capacity, or about 2 weeks supply for Tehran. The other reservoirs and 5 dam systems that supply Tehran with water, I'm not going to mention, are equally poor in condition. One is at 1%, one is at 10%, another's at 7%. They're down to nothing. Iran is drought prone. Indeed, it is the middle of the most severe drought in 57 years. But that isn't what's causing the current crisis. It's the logistical and foreseeable outcome of decades of environmental neglect, of course, and Soviet-style mismanagement that has turned a natural and arid climate into a national emergency. I still believe it's God. Iran's groundwater has been depleted primarily in effort to surge agriculture to deal with the booming population. Tehran is sinking at a rate of 25 centimeters per year. That's unbelievable. That's about a 35 millimeter photo is about an inch or so, right? So an inch a year almost as the aquifers collapse. This poses a threat to utilities, subways, and structural integrity of buildings. It's hard to imagine that the settling hasn't caused leaks in water mains already. To be clear, this is not a Tehran problem. This is an Iran problem. The drought affects the whole country, and 30 of Iran's 31 provinces are experiencing land subsidence to unchecked groundwater extraction. Iran is also heavily reliant on hydroelectric power. As you can imagine, that isn't going all that well for well water, right? The hydropower sector is reeling with over 12,500 megawatts of capacity affected. As temperatures rise, electricity production becomes increasingly unstable due to the country's energy imbalance and lack of investment in renewable infrastructure. There's no solution right now except widespread compliance with consumption guidelines. How about they blow something up like they like to? A member of the environmental faction, Iran's parliament, said the situation requires the Ministry of Energy and provincial governors to immediately implement real-time monitoring across all public institutions and government-affiliated companies, including mandatory installation of smart meters and online tracking systems. We cannot demand conservation from ordinary citizens while leaving high-consumption government bodies unchecked. Right, off with their heads. The capital, you like this, Nick? The capital began scheduling power outages again this week, according to a notice issued by Tehran Electricity Distribution Company, following unannounced outages in neighborhoods and towns. The return of outages coincides with the heat wave that has sharply driven up water. And then they have a heat wave, too. That's pretty good.
This is God, hard work.
This is God's hardball. It is statistically unlikely that Tehran will get enough rain to provide potable water to nearly 10 million people, not to mention water from other purposes. The evacuation of Tehran will not be the end of it. We're looking at the physical collapse of a country on a scale not witnessed in modern history. With this collapse will come the mother of all refugee crises and the probable fall of the current government and perhaps the splintering of Iran into smaller states. Interesting time. Yeah, don't come knocking at my door.
Now let's go back to God. In Deuteronomy, he said, "Then the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, and he will shut up the heavens, so there will be no rain, and the land yield no fruit, and you will perish quickly off the good land that the Lord is giving you." Deuteronomy 11:17. If there was ever an instance of the Bible coming true, biblical prophecy coming true, if there's ever anybody that deserved it more, it's the Iranian government.
Oh, it's so unbelievable.
When we get back, we'll talk about President Trump's plan to allow 50-year mortgages to lower the carrying cost.
Yeah, that's going to give people definitely a nice feel. Okay, when we get back.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
What show are we on, Dick?
Welcome to the Dick Morris Show with Doug DePiro.
Whoa.
Sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
You know, I'm just seeing largest U.S. aircraft carrier arrives by Venezuela, Caribbean today.
Yeah.
Just seeing this on the news.
Right.
You know.
The Ford, Gerald Ford.
Oh, yeah.
Name.
It just arrived. Wow.
Trump has floated two ideas to make housing more affordable.
Yeah, aircraft carriers and
a rebate of $2,000 per person and FHA insurance to cover 50-year mortgages. Franklin Roosevelt popularized 30-year mortgages, which reduced the amount people would have to pay each year. It increases the amount they have to pay over the duration of the loan, but that's not due in like 50 years. Compared to the current 30-year mortgages, a 50-year mortgage at 4% interest would cost $500 per month less, although the total interest paid would be substantially higher. The head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency confirmed Saturday that Trump is developing a proposal to introduce 50-year mortgages. He called the plan a complete game changer for American home buyers. Thanks to President Trump, we are indeed working on the 50-year mortgage, a complete game changer. The 50-year mortgage would be the most dramatic shift in U.S. housing finance in nearly a century. Supporters say it could lower monthly payments and extend affordability for younger Americans to help buyers struggling with record prices and high interest rates. By stretching payments over 5 years, borrowers could reduce monthly costs by up to a third, economists say. Critics warn, however, that the longer loans would slow equity growth and significantly increase total interest payments.
Right.
But in 50 years, you're dead.
But what about the banks? What about the banks? They're going to have a problem with this.
No, because they make their money from investing the money. They don't make money until you sell or until you die, and we haven't repealed the dying part.
I wonder if he's going to also, with this, because it sounds like he would do something where you only have to put 10% down, not 30 or 40.
Well, the problem with that is that you can be giving mortgages to people that can't afford them. And
that's a problem, which George Bush did for a while.
Could cause a high default rate and a financial problem.
Didn't Bush do that?
Yes, he did.
Mm-hmm.
Adjustable rate mortgages now make up about 10% of all mortgages, highest in 2 years. Median household income now spends 38.4% of its income on mortgage payments. Trump's proposed $2,000 family tariff rebate would make up for buying power taxpayers lost during the Trump inflation. And this is a key point I didn't realize. Kevin Hassett, the director of White House National Economic Policy.
Inflation, by the way, during the Biden inflation.
Said dividend payments would have to be first passed by Congress. But there's still room to go. And so we're making up ground fast. The fact is that when you look at the inflation and the mortgages that have gone on, people are still down about $2,000 relative to what their purchasing power was when Joe Biden took office. So that's inflation. And so we understand that the people feel like there's an affordability problem. We're closing the gap fast, and with these policies and potentially rebate checks, we might close the whole gap really, really fast. As people say that inflation is an issue, very few people really believe there's ongoing inflation, because there isn't. But what they're saying is, I've not made up ground from the previous inflation that crippled me. And what Trump is now saying is, by stretching out your mortgage to 50 years and giving you a $2,000 rebate from the tariff policies, we're going to make you whole.
Give you some catch-up time, or so you could catch up to your.
That's right.
A little bit. Somewhat.
That's right.
It's amazing. So let's talk about Jokel. Hochul torpedoes man-commie free bus plan. This is amazing. New York Governor Kathy Jokel pushed back Saturday against socialist mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani plan to make the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the MTA, bus rides free. Never going to happen. This is Hochul. I cannot set forth a plan right now that takes money out of the system that relies on the fares of the buses and the subways. But can we find a path to make it more affordable for people who need help? Of course we can, Hochul said.
Yeah, but this is the beginning of the Civil War.
This is
between Hochul and Mamdani.
As what you said earlier, absolutely. Governor Hochul rejection of socialist mayor Zohran signature campaign promise, free bus rides for all New Yorkers, reveal the harsh truth even Democrats can no longer ignore. The financial lunacy of a $700 million giveaway has finally broken through their ideological bubble. That's good. This is what happens when the utopia pipe dream meets actual math. The MTA's response to Mamdani's plan exposed the logistical nightmare lurking beneath these grandiose schemes. More buses, more drivers, additional depots, the cascading costs that Mamdani conveniently ignored during his campaign are now impossible to overlook. Of course, because now you got to do it. You got to implement it. Reality has this funny way of showing up uninvited. Yet this is the same political Hochul endorsed. This is the same politician Hochul endorsed, only to publicly kneecap his key proposal before he even takes office. This is so funny. Democrats eating their own. This is great. The governor's weekend reputation of the repudiation of the DSA, the Democratic Socialist
of America. Yeah.
Of America. Is that what it is? Democratic Socialist of America. It's so new, I don't know it. Was nothing short of remarkable. I don't support them. I've made that clear. Hochul declared desperately attempting to distance herself from the very movement she helped elevate. Did she really just say that? Her instance that New York will remain a capitalist city sounds like a confession from someone who finally realized they've been dancing with disaster. That's pretty good, too. This isn't just backstabbing drama. It's a party in complete meltdown. Hochul finds herself trapped. On one side, the socialist wing demands revolutionary change. On the other, someone has to pay the bills, right, until you run out of someone else's money. The $700 million question has become a wedge driving Democrats apart, forcing them to choose between their rhetoric and their city's survival.
Yeah.
Wow, baby, burn, baby, burn.
We had a caller a couple of weeks ago who said that what he thinks is going to happen is that the homeless will go on free buses.
That was good, right?
And will travel all over New York for free.
Right.
Continuously
It's going to be their mobile home.
Yeah, their mobile home.
Their mobile homeless home.
And the result is that nobody's going to ride the buses
because of that.
It's filled with homeless people. And we will basically have mobile homeless shelters replacing our bus system.
And now so many people are moving out. New York and Jersey lost $670 billion from movers out of state. That's what they call them, movers out. So they're still raising taxes. I mean, people are going to move. You know, This guy's, you can't get on a bus to get to your job.
Vote with their feet.
Yeah, they're voting with the...
And the U.S. economy is roaring along. And this is so important because the media has created the impression that the economy is in trouble, that it's growing only slowly, and that inflation is still there. And this is not true. Not true. U.S. companies' earnings are growing at the fastest pace in 4 years, defying predictions that Trump's trade war would trigger a slowdown across corporate America. Not only are earnings growing, they have outpaced expectations. Goldman Sachs' equity strategist wrote in a recent note, in our 25-year data history, this frequency of earnings surprises has been surpassed only during the COVID reopening of 20 and 21. Moreover, the party isn't over. Analysts expect the ongoing above-trend earnings growth in the fourth quarter, too. What about all these gloomy reports of job cuts? Don't misunderstand. Those jobs lost by government workers are just as painful as those from the private sector.
Sure.
But these cuts are not reflective of a softening job market or slowing economy. Eventually, they should ultimately be paid for. According to the Bank of America internal data, jobs growth held steady in October, while easing wage pressures and no spike in unemployment. Bank of America internal data suggests that in our view, there is no significant further slowdown in the labor market in October. This is the Wall Street Journal. Mm-hmm. Everybody should be nonstop suspicious of all the left-wing media reporting on the economy. Understand, Bloomberg, CNBC, and all the rest are absolutely committed to helping the Trump White House fail. They know that the midterms and Trump's ability to push forward with his agenda will hinge on the economy, and as important, people's impression of it, which they can manipulate. My advice, this is the Wall Street Journal, do your homework and challenge every report you see.
Unbelievable that so Trump wouldn't win. They want to see us fail. You know, the economy, the United States. It's just horrible. Instead of saying, you know what, I don't like the guy, don't vote for him, but,
So basically, when Trump imposed the tariffs, they all said, oh, this is going to cause big inflation. This is going to take points off our economic growth. Right. And this is going to be terrible.
And that's not
happening. And what they're trying to, and then we had
send out the dogs.
And then we had a period of a couple of months there where the government was closed. Right. And its closure affected the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And it wasn't able to issue the current data. In fact, the data for October will probably never be issued now. And we'll never know what happened during that month. But the signs are very good. And it looks as if October was very good. And that November and December are and will be good. And what they're trying to do is to make everybody freak out because of negative data.
Right. Scare tactic or
even
whatever.
Though that negative data is not accurate. Now their new thing is to say, oh, but the tariffs may be thrown out.
Oh, yeah. And look what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And there might be a dragon might come.
Yeah. And fire on your front door and the whole thing. We never talk about this and it gets glossed over a lot. During COVID and Trump had the economy on fire when COVID hit. Could you imagine if the economy was in the dump before the COVID thing happened? I mean, that helped us get through that whole thing. And nobody talks about that. We should talk about it next week, how that did. He had the economy on fire, which helped us. So I have to bring that up. Declining population is a new, huge global problem. In 2024, 47% of households were headed by married couples. The second lowest share since 2022. All-time low was 46.8. Household headed by married couples in the 2020s are the lowest ever recorded in the U.S. The percentage of households with a married couple peaked 75 years ago in 1949. It was almost 80%. That percentage has been below 50% since 2010, when the rate was about 50%. In other words, less than half of American households have included a married couple for over a decade.
The political impact of this is enormous. If I look at a poll and I want to figure out which party is winning, the most important thing I can look at is, are you married? And the fewer people are married, that is, they live together, they're separated, they're divorced, they're widows, doesn't matter why, or they're single. The fewer people who actually are married, the more Democrat the vote is.
The fewer people that are married, the more Democrat the vote.
Right.
Why is that?
Because Republicans marry and Democrats don't.
And Republicans have more of a moral feel in their life, maybe.
And both men and women are marrying later in life. In 24, the average age for a first marriage was 30 years for men and 29 for women. The youngest...
All right, go on, sorry.
Go ahead.
The census has tracked marriage ages since 1890. In that time, the youngest median age of marriage were in 1956, when it was 22.5 for men and 20 for women, which it should be. That's when women could have the most beautiful children. But age is the whole story. While marriage ages have been increasing since the late 50s, so has life expectancy. So there you could see that's something. Comparing marriage age with average life expectancy, Americans are marrying sooner in their lifetime than prior generations. The age of first marriages has steadily increased since the late 50s. Marriage rates have declined across all races and ethnicities except Asian men and women, who had the highest rate among all races and ethnicities since 2004. The marriage rate has remained stable in 24. 60%, almost 61% of Asian men and 62% of Asian women are married, nearly identical to 1990 rates of 61 for men and 62.5 for women. Marriage rates among people who identify as white, Hispanic, and black have dropped since 1990. For black and white people, where more census data is available, rates have been declining even longer.
So, but politically, the key factor is that if you're married, that's actually married, a three-story Justice of the Peace sanctioned it, and you're living with the woman or the man, you are much more likely to be a Republican than if you're living on your own, if you're single. The incomes for single people are, of course, less than those for married households because they have one income as opposed to two. And ultimately, a lot of the distinctions about gender gap and about the cities versus rural areas are really just other methods of saying that it depends on whether or not you're married.
Right. And then they show the divorce, right? The share of divorced men and women has increased. In 1950, 2% of men and 2.4% of women were divorced. Shouldn't that be the same, actually? If you're getting a divorce, 2% of men is be 2% of women, right? Well, I don't get that. In 24, those figures were 8.5% for men and 10, almost 11 for women. The opposite was true of widows and widowers. The share of widowed men has declined 1.3% points from 4.1 in 1950 to 3% in 2024. Widowed women dropped 3.6% points from 11.8. There's too many numbers. But I'm going to say this one thing. Married men don't live longer. It just feels that way. That's an old joke.
Yeah, but in long-term impact, the Republicans have emphasized family stability. They've emphasized not having children out of wedlock. They've emphasized policies to keep families together and to keep marriages going. And the Democrats have done the opposite. And
they don't care.
They don't care. Well, they do care.
Marry the government.
Exactly. They feel precisely. That's the point.
That's it.
Marry the government.
And get stuff.
Have women depend not on men, breadwinners,
right,
but depend on the government instead.
All right. We'll talk more about this when we get back.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group. Looking ahead to next year's governor's race, Stefanik, who's going to be the Republican, and Hochul are in a dead heat early in the poll.
That's good now. If she's in a dead heat now.
In a head-to-head matchup, Hochul leads Stefanik, but only by 46 to 43, well within the margin of error. There's also talk about Blakeman from Nassau County running, but if he would run, Hochul's lead expands to 11 points.
Yeah, but if Trump, endorses Stefanik, he's not going to stay in the race.
Yeah. And in that poll,
and he did
only 37% said they would vote to re-elect Hochul or even considering it.
Wow.
Well, 55% said it's time for someone new.
Wow, that's a good poll.
Yeah,
I
it
like
really
that.
is. It's good information.
You think this guy would stay in the race if Trump endorsed Stefanik?
No.
Do you know anything about him?
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
And he's gone against the trend in Nassau, but he's got much lower name ID, and he would have trouble putting it together if Trump endorsed Stefanik.
Yeah.
But I think Trump will endorse Stefanik.
And if he's smart, he'll back out if Trump supports.
I think so.
Right.
Now, the Democrats have had a series of meetings and realized that their agenda is a deeply corrosive cultural agenda, combined with a flat-out refusal to address economic issues, and that this was a one-way trip to obscurity. According to a new Democratic Party released document, the party plans to win next year by calling on congressional Democrats to convince voters that we share their priorities by shelving the party's deeply unpopular cultural agenda.
When are they going to do that?
Now.
I don't believe them.
Deciding to win, the document was called. And they're growing
praise from prominent Biden and Clinton strategists, calls on the Democratic Party to abandon its deeply unpopular left-wing cultural agenda and attempt a complete rebrand after polling showed. They got to wait for polling for them to rebrand, not that what's right and wrong in your mind and your heart.
Well, but they're right.
Morons.
What happened was that as Trump ran in 24, more and more Latinos and Hispanics defected to the Republican Party.
Well, because they're Roman Catholic. They left their countries with these tyrants, whether it would be Castro or Venezuela or whatever. Sure.
And the Democrats had to make it up someplace. So what they did was they got their candidate, Harris, to move to the left on environmental issues, to push electrical vehicles and require them, and to move to the left on gay issues, particularly transitional people in schools.
Right.
And they adopted...
That's where she went. Hold on. That's where they went wrong. If you want to talk about the gay issues, that's cool. Get the people to feel good about themselves, whatever you got to do. Not the transgender thing with the kids and not telling parents. That's where they screw up.
That's where they really screwed up.
You know what I mean?
And as the election unfolded, as we went closer to Election Day, Harris doubled down on that stuff, pushing hard for increased payments for transitional children and increased prohibitions against telling the parents what was going on.
Right.
That combined with the electric vehicle mandate meant that the Democrats moved so far to the left on environment and gay issues that they've lost touch with the mainstream.
Yeah, but more than that, more than they moved so far left, which is true and is horrible, they're showing people that they're basically telling you, this is what you should do. You have to buy this vehicle.
Yeah.
And parents, we don't really care if the parents, what they think about their children. So they're showing that they're tyrants. They're showing exactly those Spanish people that left those countries what they were going to do. You could have your kids. Imagine Roman Catholic Spanish people from all these countries that come here and they don't know if their kids are going to come back as Jill.
Forget Democrat or Republican, Jill or Jack.
Yeah.
So the Democrats are increasingly getting that it's their social agenda that screwed them up. And we'll see if they stay with that realization.
Yeah, but here's what they have to do, though. You're talking about, for Republican and Democrat, it's a 50-50, pretty close, right? For the far left and the moderate left, it's probably 50-50 in the Democratic Party. So that's going to be pretty hard to get people
and as moderates leave the Democratic Party,
there's going to be more.
Those numbers get worse and worse for them. It becomes a tipping point. Now, everybody is fretting about what happens with people leaving New York and California.
Yeah, and now DeSantis is worried about it as much as he wants people. After the man-commie win in New York City, Florida and Texas Republicans are worried that the resulting exodus of New Yorkers will bring more Democrats to their states. They worry that these folks won't leave their ideologies at home, but will move their states left. That's pretty stupid. You're leaving here, and you're a Democrat. Instead of saying, I'm going to Florida because I like the tax thing or the lack thereof, taxes and whatnot. Let me vote for people that will tax us high and do all the other stuff.
Well, what they do is that they say, I'm moving, but keeping my views on abortion.
Right.
And they're reluctant to change their party.
I think what's his name should say, keep your stupidity to yourself or don't come to Florida.
But DeSantis has wasted no time trolling Mandami's win by posting a poll on X asking his 3.3 million followers how the Sunshine Vote state should deal with the exodus.
Yeah.
He gave them three options.
Build the Florida border wall, tariff all transplants, or recruit new transplants. More than 45,000 Floridians weighed in before the poll closed Thursday morning, building a border wall, won with nearly 49% of the, imagine that percent of the vote. So you have a border wall on one side, on the Gulf, you have it with tubes.
Right.
And then only 14% wanted to recruit the New Yorkers fleeing to man-commie socialist paradise. I'm a New Yorker and I don't want them either. We're in Florida a lot.
Right.
I'm a New Yorker. I don't want them coming to Florida.
Now, when we come back, there is at last increasing evidence that the FBI is coming up with of Hillary and Bill Clinton's fraud in the 2016 election. What happened, obviously, was when Hillary became Secretary of State, the Clinton Foundation decided we're going to go out to other countries and raise a lot of money. And we're going to tell them that they can have Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton speak at their events and in return get millions of dollars. Now it's turning out that those millions ended up in the campaigns of Hillary as well as in her personal pocket. So when we get back, we'll talk about that.
And I think we should call it pillory.
Yeah, right.
Public shame, pillory.
The Dick Morris Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dick Morris Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Dick Morris and Doug DePiro Show, sponsored by the Patriot Gold Group.
And before we go anywhere, pillory, meaning publicly shamed.
Yeah, that's a very good name.
That's her name from now on.
And pillory, was in Williamsburg and other places. It was the socks they put people in.
Yeah, they put the head and arms in it and they threw tomatoes. And they gave them tomatoes like out there, like whoever, the guards or whatever, actually had buckets of like eggs and tomatoes. Pillory. Okay,
so the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley disclosed internal Justice Department and FBI records suggesting that senior federal officials decided not to investigate alleged campaign violations by Hillary and the Democratic Party.
Pillory.
Yeah, describing what the document described as a fact pattern emerging from the Bureau's own agents. The development matters now because it raises questions about whether federal law enforcement agencies allowed political considerations to override the enforcement of campaign finance laws. Of course they did. Biden was in power. In this release of text of internal communications, Grassley said that the records show officials in the Justice Department's Public Integrity Section, including Richard Pilger, along with J.P. Cooney at the U.S. Attorney's Office, declined to authorize a referral for prosecution, despite FBI electronic communications arguing that the evidence supported inquiry. The electronic communication provided to Grassley under congressional oversight reportedly details work by FBI agents that identified efforts by the Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party to conceal payments to the opposition research firm Fusion GPS, which in turn produced the debunked Steele dossier targeting then-candidate Clinton. Courageous whistleblowers came to my office, Grassley said, to sound the alarm that the Justice Department was inappropriately interfering in efforts to investigate potential criminal activity by Hillary Clinton in her campaign. These records show that the same partisans who rushed to cover for the Clinton rapidly pursued Arctic Frost, which was a runaway train aimed directly at President Trump and the Republican political apparatus. The release also noted that in 22, the Federal Elections Commission fined the Clinton campaign and the DNC for disguising these payments to Fusion. If federal prosecutors indeed declined to pursue charges despite evidence of payment concealment, critics argued that it suggests a double standard for enforcement depending on partisan affiliation. The records come amid broader scrutiny of whether federal investigative agencies treated conservatives and Republicans differently, including through the Arctic Frost investigation. For the Clinton campaign, the DNC, the new disclosures may revive questions about whether the proper investigative channels were pursued and whether politics rather than strictly legal criteria influenced enforcement decisions. The whole Clinton campaign, the whole Clinton operation against Trump and then in the first years of the Trump presidency was entirely designed with one goal: get Donald Trump thrown out of office, get him impeached. And,
or anything they could do to get him out.
Find anything that they possibly could.
That's right.
And the Democratic Party funded the research that led to the Steele dossier that accused President Trump of all kinds of misconduct.
But they laundered that money so it didn't go from the hand of Hillary to the thing. We still don't know who actually handed them.
Well, we know Barry Elias did, the lawyer.
That's one. I don't know that name. That's one of the lawyers of the campaign.
That's the lawyer for the campaign.
Oh,
yeah. But you're right. They dressed it up and they hid it.
I mean, they are an organized crime syndicate. Organized crime.
But it's worth noting that Trump never did this. Trump was elected in 16, defeated allegedly in 20, and there was no persecution of any of the Biden supporters. There was no indictments. There were no charges of cover-up, even though there were a lot. They had the flap over who won the 2020 election, but after that there was no persecution. And I think that Trump basically said he's not going to go after Hillary in 2017, and he didn't.
I remember having a conversation with him, and he said, and I said, because all the people that were telling me, I can't believe this, if he gets in, he do this, and he says, no. They're going to keep going after me the way they are. I'm not going to do anything. Yeah. I said, at least you should go after one person, somebody. He said, no, right in my face. He goes, no, I'm not going to do it. I don't care.
He decided right after the 2016 election.
I'm going to keep the country rolling.
Pocket the victory, keep the country rolling, and not mire it in investigations.
He was so...
And this whole period of investigations, indictments,
with them,
impeachments and everything were all by the Democrats against him. And he did not do the same things to them when he first took office.
But it got so horrible how they came at him, and Rudy and Peter Navarro and my good friend General Flynn, right? Horrible that he said, that's it. I'm done with you. You're out. Yeah. You're out, Tom.
And now there has been a good deal of blowback, but Trump didn't initiate it. And when Trump could have made this his major issue, he didn't.
Like Chuckles said, this is lawfare and he's getting a DOJ. Yeah. Really? How dare you could even say that kind of thing after what you guys just did? So now, by the way, Hochul and Man Dummy, I think kissed and made up after we had that other story, right? Mayor-elect Man-Kami and Governor Hochul met Thursday to prepare for the possibility President Trump could take punitive actions against New York City after Mandami is sworn in several weeks from now. For months, Trump threatened to cut federal funding for New York and boost ICE's presence or deploy the National Guard in the city in the event that Mamdani, a Democrat socialist, was elected mayor. Trump routinely called Mamdani a dummy communist whose left-wing agenda would put New York at risk. I'm not going to send a lot of money to New York, Trump said in mid-October at the White House. We're not going to ruin one of the greatest cities because we'll make that city great again. We will clean up the crime in about 30 days. In other words, if he has to, and when the dummy does what he does. It took 12 days to do Washington, D.C., so New York is bigger, and Chicago. We've already made a lot of progress despite fighting from the government. All these cities we want to clean up, he added. Since Mamdani's November 4th election victory and the Queens-born president, which he is, right? Trump's from Queens, born president has been a bit more circumspect, though even saying last week he hopes it works out for New York. See, at least that's what he says. Like these other idiots want Trump to fail. He says at least, first of all, this is his place. You know, he owns his place. At least it works out for I hope it works out for New York, that he'll help them a little bit, maybe. And he means it, and he will. He's going to wait until New York goes right down to not to nothing, but they're really hurting, like 6 months or maybe a year. And then he's going to say, I'll come in and help you guys.
But Mamdani is going to have to face decisions about whether he's going to let ICE deport people in New York.
Right. Hochul invited him to the Midtown office Thursday to talk about the range of topics, including what Trump might do after Mamdani is inaugurated. The governor and the mayor-elect discussed the possibility that the federal government would surge ICE and a National Guard to New York City. That's at a readout of the meeting provided by them. Both agree that New York is, they both agree that New York is safe and that the federal surge would not improve public safety. Really? Just right there. Mm-hmm. So they're just in another world, this whole thing.
But what they're trying to do is to tie up Trump's hands by saying, look, he's going to discriminate against us. He's going to come down on New York City. And Trump is saying, I'm backing off. I'm going to wait until Mamdani does something, and then I'm going to move in.
And hits bottom. And he's going to wait until people are hurting. You know, there's going to be something happening on.
Well, what they'll do immediately is the ICE will not be able to operate in New York.
Is that, I thought you said last week, I asked you this, and you said that, we supersede, the federal government supersedes the city of New York.
It does.
So?
But they have to enforce that.
Right.
He's going to tell cops.
Now they're breaking the law.
He's going to tell cops. Yeah, exactly.
So they're going to be breaking the law.
He's going to tell cops, don't cooperate with ICE. Don't finger illegal immigrants for them.
I have to imagine that the cops are not knowing what they're doing right now. There's got to be a lot of cops that are saying, whoa, what's going on? We got this mayor's going to tell us not to help the ICE guys or to arrest them. He said something to the effect like, I'm going to have them arrested. You know, ICE guys, I'm going to have them arrested. And they asked Trump, and he says, I'm going to have him arrested.
Yeah.
Just like that. But this is really weird. I don't know how this is going to pan out. I got to see this.
Well, it's going to pan out into a big fight between Hochul and Mamdani.
You think Trump...
And Hochul's going to do everything she can to hide from that. But Mamdani is going to come after Trump. And Trump is not going to take that lying down.
Do you think Trump is going to send people now before he gets inaugurated?
No.
No, he's going to
wait. But he
will
shortly after.
So listen, we got to go. It was a great show. It's an honor to be here with you, Dick. And why do I have to give everyone a different name? Hochul's, Jokel, Mankind.
I'm just waiting for the name you give me.
I got to think about that. Yeah. You know, I gave you a lot of names. I can't tell you. Thank you, Dick Morrison. And thank you to Roxana Maria on the rocks.
Okay, bye-bye.
No. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
No. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Dick Morris Show. You can hear The Dick Morris Show Sundays at noon. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast at BeBullish.com with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe
at BeBullish.com.